Most founders think a good interview is about making the candidate comfortable. You ask softball questions, you keep it light, you crack a few jokes, and then, surprise, 3 weeks into the job, they can't handle any pressure. And the reality is, if you're not willing to make somebody uncomfortable in an interview, you're gonna hire people who fall apart the second things get hard. And it's business. Things will get hard. My name is Kyle Mao. I am the founder and CEO of HireUA, and we've helped over 1,000 companies get the remote global talent that they need. By the end of this video, you're gonna have our complete interview framework to actually test somebody to make sure that they will not fold like a wet noodle when the time comes. This works best if you have a growing business that's actually scaling up and you're tired of hiring people who look really good on their resume, and they all look really good on their resume. They can't actually execute when the pressure gets down to it. Now, before I break this down, you need to understand why most interview advice is completely backwards. Most people say that you should build rapport and you should make candidates feel at ease. That's fine if you're hiring for a job where nothing ever goes wrong, but really, how many jobs in the world are actually like that? If your business has deadlines, it probably does. If your business has difficult clients or customers or people, it probably does. Or if your business has high stakes situations, then you need to make sure that you test people for those exact situations. The number one thing we've learned at HireUA is that the interview should be as hard as the job, but maybe more so if you can do it. If someone can't handle a tough conversation on an interview, they definitely cannot handle a tough conversation with your biggest client when there's actually money on the line. Here is exactly what happens when you run soft interviews. It's very much like taking a test. People who are smartest in school and get straight A's don't always become the richest in life. The people who are able to skate through school, do just enough, and basically BS their way through passing the test tend to be the most successful in life. You're selecting for people who interview well, not people who perform well. You don't want someone who just gives you the textbook answers. They smile at the right times. They seem like they're nice and they're easy to work with. This is a trap, because then this person starts and reality starts to hit. The project gets complicated. The client gets demanding. The customer support ticket queue is flowing overboard. And suddenly that confident person who was absolutely had it all together in the interview is stressed, they're stuck, they're silent, and now you're stuck. You spent 6 weeks hiring them, another 4 weeks training them, you're 10 weeks, 3 months into it, you've got them on the payroll, and now you're realizing way too late in the game that they do not have the ability to handle the pressure that your business needs, and you're basically stuck with them at this point. But wait, because the cycle gets worse. Because meanwhile, to cover for this new noodle that you hired, your actual A players are picking up the slack, and they're getting frustrated with the new noodle. They're asking you, why did you hire the noodle? And you're thinking, well, the noodle seemed like they were really great in the interview. And that is the problem. Seemed great and actually is effective are two completely different things. And if you screw this up, you're going to waste months trying to get the noodle to work when they can't actually do the work themselves. Most founders will waste half a year per bad hire because they're afraid to put someone on the spot in an interview. They think being tough will scare away the best people, but here's what they miss. The good candidates, the smart people, the ones who are ready to step in and succeed would welcome that pressure, as opposed to just being another candidate going through the same interview saying, what is your greatest challenge in life? Good candidates want you to take them seriously. They want to be challenged. I actually, even on an interview recently, I was hiring a new executive assistant. She said to me, like, I can see that you are asking questions to get the best out of me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to show myself. That is the kind of person that you want. Those are the people you want in your business, not the ones that get scared off. Quick note, if you're realizing that your hiring process is broken and you need someone to fix it for you, that is exactly what we do at HireUA. We handle everything: sourcing, interviewing, pressure tests, the whole thing. If you're a growing business and you're looking for remote help, click the link in the description below and we'll see if it makes sense to work together. But even if you don't work with us and you have your own teams, then keep watching, because what I'm about to show you will completely change your hiring game. Let's talk about uncomfortable questions. These are questions that force candidates to be honest about their weaknesses, failures, and their limitations. What you need is someone who's honest about those answers, not someone who puts lipstick on a pig. Most interview questions let people hide. You know, what's your biggest weakness? And they say, I'm a perfectionist. That's my biggest weakness, is I want things to be perfect too much. That's not reality. That's not really how the world works. Here's what you should ask instead. Tell me about a time you failed completely at something. Who was responsible? What did you do? How was it fixed? Notice what this does. It does not let them off easy. It doesn't just let them tell this story. And many candidates will try to get out of this. They'll tell you the story, but they won't tell you who's really at fault and who was accountable and how to actually fix it. Most people will try to spin this failure into somehow bragging about themselves. I failed because I was was too much of a perfectionist and I didn't get it done in time. You need to push back and say, I'm talking about a real failure where you really screwed it up and it actually cost something big. You're looking for someone who can accept that and has learned from it and is willing to change things off of their mistakes. If they can't give you a real answer to that, is a massive red flag. Either one, they've never failed, which means that they've never actually done anything difficult in their life, or they can't take responsibility. As you can guess, in a business, both of those are a problem because one, you're getting a noodle who isn't ready for the job, or two, they can't take responsibility. And this is honestly the worst type of person you can have in your business, is someone who always is pointing the finger somewhere else. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It wasn't me, blah, blah, blah. The next question I like to ask all the time is just, why do you want this job? Because you'd be surprised how many people have not actually done any research to own why they want the job at this company. So literally, why do you want this job? You'd be surprised how many people say, well, because I need a job, or because I want a remote job. When you make someone actually articulate things and don't just let them off the hook, it makes the job so much more effective and you can actually screen for good people. The next question I like to ask to make them uncomfortable is, what is something that your last manager would say that you need to improve at? This is different from asking them what they need to improve, which is their own biased take. You're asking what their manager, their last direct report asked. And if they say, my manager never gave me feedback, that's concerning because the manager either didn't think that they were worthy of training at all, or the manager maybe thought that they were just completely hopeless. If they say, my manager thought I was great at everything, never gave me any constructive feedback, they're lying. Everybody has areas to improve. The question is whether they're self-aware enough to actually admit it. And the final question that really tends to make people uncomfortable is to tell them, walk me through the last day at your job. What were you actually doing on a day-to-day basis? As you can suspect, in today's world, there's often a lot of bloat. There's a lot of people who don't actually really do much of anything at their job. And so this exposes their exaggerated resumes instantly. If someone says that they led strategy, but can't actually lay out what that strategy was, guess what? You have your answer. They didn't really do much of anything. You want specifics. What did their Monday morning meetings look like? What about Thursday? What were the actual tasks? What were they actually accountable for? Because if everyone is accountable, then nobody is. This is why these questions work, is because you can't prepare for them. They can't rely on prepared answers. It's not the same question that they got in the last 10 interviews. They have to actually think and they have to be honest, and you're putting them on the spot. Most people can't think on the spot. And when you make people think on the spot, you put them under pressure. And that is when you see who they really are. You're trying to see if they can actually be honest when the gets tough. Most people can't, because if they can't even be honest in an interview about a past job where they had a failure or they screwed something up, if they can't even be honest when it doesn't actually matter, then they're not going to be honest when they screwed up and it actually does matter inside of your company. The second part of the framework is a scenario pressure test. This is where you put them in a situation that actually mimics the job, and you may or you may not actually tell them about it beforehand. You don't ask them how they would handle this situation. You actually make them handle it on the spot. Here's how this works in practice. Let's say you're hiring an assistant. Don't ask them, how do you handle it when your executive has a busy day? Give them your day. Say, how are you going to handle this right now? You have 5 minutes to totally triage the day. Example number 2, let's say you're hiring a salesperson. Are you just going to ask them, how do you handle objections, where they then say something like, well, I try to understand the client and their fears and their needs, and then I try to overcome that objection? Why would you do that? A salesperson should be able to overcome anything on any point at any time. Instead of getting the theory, which doesn't actually tell you anything, again, it's like taking a test in college. Like, sure, someone can read the book, they can put the answers on the test. It doesn't actually mean they can do anything useful. Give them an objection. Say, Mr. Salesperson, interviewing for this job right now, I'm a prospect and I think your product is too expensive and I can get it at half the price somewhere else. What are you going to say? And then you actually play the role. You don't even need to give them a warning. Most people, if a salesperson comes to an interview and isn't ready to role play, that ain't it. Push back on their answers. Make it hard. See how they think on their feet. Or let's say you're hiring someone for operations manager. Give them a real problem that your company is facing at that moment. Who knows, you might actually get a really good idea out of it. Say, we're 3 weeks behind on this deliverable. Everybody's burned out. Everybody's pissed off. What are you going to do? And see how they actually triage the situation and what they actually do. Don't let them give you theory. Make them walk you through the actual steps they are going to take to solve the problem. And like I said, we talk to enough people in enough interviews, maybe you actually get an idea that solves the problem. The key to all of this is to make them solve a problem in real time. Ideally with incomplete information and real stakes, because that is what the job actually is. If they freeze up or they get defensive or they make excuses about why they can't answer because they need more details, blah, 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 you can expect to get the same exact damn results when they're actually on the job. The best candidates are going to lean in. They are going to ask clarifying questions. They might say like, okay, I'm down with this, but I need to know this. And they are going to put you on the spot in return. They think out loud. They're not afraid to say, I don't know, but here's the first step I would take. If they are willing to put feet into motion, that is one of the most important things when it comes to hiring global talent. But despite all of this is where most people get it wrong because they think scenario questions and situations are about the right answer. They're not. There is no right answer. You're testing to see how they perform under pressure. Do they take initiative? Do they completely freak out, freeze up, start stuttering? Do they get creative? Do they ask for help? Do they take ownership of the problem? Do they accept the challenge laid out in front of them? That is what matters. The third part is anchoring everything in actual reality. This is where you kill the fantasy version of the job and you show them what it's actually like. Most interviews are glorified sales pitches. You are selling the role, you're selling your company, you're making it sound exciting, and the reality is it's really not probably as exciting as you're making it out to be. Instead, you need to be brutally honest about the hard parts. You might say like, this role requires weekends. Like your first 3 weeks are cleaning up the mess that I made before, the last person made before you. You'll have weeks where you're working nights and weekends. You need to be honest with them and then see if they lean in or they lean out. If their reaction is like backpedaling, if they immediately start backpedaling and trying to negotiate the harder parts away, then they're probably not it. If they nod and say like, oh, I figured that was part of the job, that's realistic. Maybe they're ready. You want people who go in with their eyes open, not who are already stepping away and shrinking from the responsibility of the role. And here's the other thing is you really want to know why they want to leave their current job or why they don't have a job. Not the polished answer, not the, I'm looking for the next step in my career. What is actually pushing you out the door? What is making your blood boil about the company that you're currently working at? And then who knows? You might have the same issue there. And you might have to say like, well, we have the same thing. Everybody takes a crap every morning, right? So how are you going to handle it any differently? Anchoring in reality does two things. Number one, it filters out people who want a job that just doesn't exist because not every job is pretty, obviously. And number two, it builds trust. When you're honest about the downsides, candidates will think more highly of you. They're not going to think that you are just doing nothing but buttering them up, leading them like a pig to slaughter. Instead, being honest will work the opposite way. It will actually draw people towards you because you've been honest and real about the situation. Here is what happens when you run interviews like this. You hire slower, but you also hire a lot better. Why? Because you already pressure tested them before you actually gave them the job, and you gave them a reality check. They know exactly what they're getting into. Meanwhile, companies, founders, CEOs who are running comfortable interviews where you make friends are churning through people, 6 to 9 months. They're constantly rehiring. They're going through the same process, the same training, basically living the same life on repeat on a hamster wheel. And they wonder why their competitors are moving faster, able to scale quicker. It's because their competitors aren't wasting time asking someone in an interview what their greatest weakness is, only to hear that they work too hard. Completely useless information. Look, you can keep running interviews the way that everybody else does, ask the same generic questions, and hope that you get better results. And then you'll probably end up spending months fixing those hiring mistakes. Alternatively, you can implement this framework and you can see the results. You can put people under pressure. You can make them a little bit uncomfortable in interviews. You can get comfortable with actually being uncomfortable yourself. And ultimately, you're going to get a lot of time and a lot of energy back. Implement this framework. You'll see the results right away. If you would like us to build your entire recruiting system, the interview framework, the pressure test, the personality test, the funnel, the trial task, whatever else you need, click the first link in the description below. We have helped over 1,000 companies do exactly this and find the top 1% of global talent, giving them their unfair advantage in the hiring market. And if you want to see how top companies actually manage their remote employees from end to end, click this video here and watch that one next. A lot of founders waste 30, 40, 50% of their entire work time managing bad hires and bad people, basically dealing with the hiring mistakes. Each month that you run a soft interview is another month that you are stuck cleaning up the mess that somebody made because you didn't give them the actual reality of the job. Your competitors are already pressure testing people and they will run laps around you unless you start doing the same. That's it. I'll see you in the next video.